Welcome to the free Excel CEO Challenge. My name is Jim Klein and I am the founder and developer of the Excel CEO system of Microsoft Excel and Access training. The Excel CEO Challenge is basically this. Watch this video. If after you watch the video you say to yourself, yeah, I already knew how to do all that, then you may not need to take this course. But if you say, that is a really cool way to do that project, then you will learn a lot from an Excel CEO course. The Excel CEO Challenge video is an actual lesson taught in Chapter 7 of the Excel course. I decided to use this exercise as the challenge because it teaches you how to use some functions that most Excel users don't know about, but that can make your life a whole lot easier. In fact, I showed this exercise to a financial consultant who had an MBA from Princeton, and he told me that I showed him in 10 minutes how he could solve a problem that was going to take him about 3 days to do. In this exercise, I'm going to show you how to use some text functions to solve some common problems that you probably have every day. Text functions are basically things that you can do with text strings, and they're very easy to use. If you want to work along during this exercise, you can do so by downloading the practice files. All you have to do is go to www.excelceo.com/names.xlsx. So if you just type that address into the address bar on your browser and hit enter, you'll go straight to the file and you can work along with me. With that said, let's get started. Okay, what you see in front of you right now is a list of names. Now these names are in a format where the last name is first, followed by a comma, then a space, then the first name. So the first name up here is Bison, comma, space, Raymond. The next one is Jewel, comma, space, Cecilia. Your assignment in this project is to write one formula that will take this data in a last name, comma, space, first name format and turn it around to where it shows the first name, space, last name. Some of you probably already looked at this and said, Jim, just wait a second. This is real easy to do. All you have to do is a text to columns function to split out the names and then write something to put it back together. And yes, you can do that. However, I don't want you to do it that way. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show it to you for those of you who don't know how to do that. What you do is you click up here on the data bar, then you come down and select the entire list of names here. Over here under the Data Tools group, you see an icon that says Text to Columns. So you click on Text to Columns, and what it does is it throws you into a three-step wizard. The first thing it asks you is this going to be a delimited list or is it a fixed width? Ours is delimited because it's delimited by the comma, so we're just going to leave that there and click Next. The next screen asks you which delimiter are you going to use. It's not a tab, so I'm going to uncheck the tab there, but it is a comma, so I'll click that. You see over here in the data down below, it looks like it's already separated out. So that is fine. We'll click the next button. We want it in general format. That's fine. I'm just going to click Finish. So what we see here is that through the text to columns, it just broke out the names and it took out the space. So basically it just took out the comma and put the last name in one column and the first name in another column. I'm going to click Control-Z as in zebra on my keyboard. That's the shortcut that undoes the step that we just did. And the reason is because lots of times data like this comes from a database, like an Access database, SQL Server, Oracle, or SAP, or something like that. If you break apart this data when it came from a database, then the next time that you have to do the same thing, you've got to repeat that procedure all over again. If you write a formula around the data, then all you have to do is make sure the formula is correct. The data comes in, the formula automatically works. Whenever you have a set of data like this, try to keep the data in its original form. Don't try to mess with the data by breaking it apart or doing calculations on it and actually changing the data. Data is going to come to you in different formats. Sometimes it'll be in a text file, in a CSV file from a database or whatever, and you want to try to keep that data by itself. Don't mess with the data. Write formulas around the data. So the first thing that we're going to do is break out the last name. That's going to be the easiest one to do. So what I'm going to do is come up here in cell B1 and type last name. Now the first function I'm going to show you is called a left function. A left function just basically takes certain characters from the left of the text string. And this is going to be real easy to do. Watch this. In cell B2, I'm going to type equals left, open parentheses, go to A2. And if you notice, when I typed left and open parentheses, this screen tip came up here at the bottom and it shows you the arguments that you need to supply the formula with. So the first one says text. What text do we want to use the left function on? It's in A2. So we'll tap A2 and then a comma. Then it asks number of characters. How many characters do we want to return? Well, in the word bison, B-I-S-S-O-N, there's 6 characters. So I'm going to type the number 6, close parentheses, and enter. And when we do that, it returns the name bison just perfectly. But we're only returning 6 characters, and if we do that for the rest of the data, it's not going to work. Here's another little trick I want to show you. You see the bottom right-hand corner of the cell here, there's a little black box. That's called a data fill box. If you hold your cursor over that box, you'll see that it turns to a bold plus sign. If you click on that and drag it down, we're going to drag it down 9 fields. If we do that and release, you see that it copies the formula. So over here it says left A3, left A4. That's a pretty cool functionality to know how to do. Let's go back to our formula. We see that the formula is taking the left 6 of whatever is in cell A2 or A3. And for the first one, it worked just fine. But look at the second one, Jewel, J-U-W-E-L, comma, and it returned the comma. We really don't want the comma because the comma is not part of the last name. If you look down here at number 5, Arnson, it didn't bring you the last N because the N is in the 7th character. We need to find some way of telling Excel how many characters do we want. We don't want to use 6 all the time, but we want to use all the characters up to the comma. So we're going to insert a column there, and I'm going to call this column find. This is the second function that I'm going to teach you how to do. It's the find function. Not many people know about this, and this one's pretty cool. Watch this. What we want to do is we want to find the position of the comma in each one of these cells. To do that, I'm going to type equals find, open parentheses. The first argument says find text. What text do you want to find? We want to find the comma, so I'm going to put quote, comma, quote. That is the text that we want to find. What's the next argument? Within text. Within text is the cell reference. So I'll just click on cell A2, and the start num over here that's in parentheses, that means it's optional. We don't want that, so we're just going to end our parentheses and enter. And we see that in cell A2, the comma is found in the 7th place. I'm going to use my handy dandy data fill functionality right there, and we see that the comma is in different places in every one of these cells. Now that we know where the comma is, we can easily come into our function over here, and instead of saying 6, I'm going to highlight the number 6 here and click on cell B2. B2 is 7, so we're going to say B2 minus 1 and enter. If you do that, you can copy this all the way down, and look at that. It comes in just perfectly. Now, I want to show you something else that's really cool. I'm going to highlight these 2 formulas in cells B and C. If I hold my cursor over the data fill button, it turns to a plus sign. Double click that, and it goes all the way down to the last row. I'm going to hit end and down arrow on my keyboard to go down to the last row. Look at what that formula did. By double clicking the data fill button, it went all the way down to row 1001. We'll go back up here to the top and give ourselves a little bit of space there. The next thing that we want to do is we want to break out the first name. In cell D1, I'm going to type first name and enter, and we go down. Now, if we use the left function to extract the last name, what function do you think we're going to use to extract the first name, since it's over to the right of the text field? If you said the right function, you're absolutely incorrect. We're going to do an easier function. It's called the mid function. Basically, the mid function takes data from the middle of the text string. So I'm going to say equals mid. The text is going to be A2, just like we did last time. And then it says start number. Where do we want to start? Well, we want to start after the comma, right? In Bison, comma, space, Raymond, it starts in the 7th. We don't want it to be 7. We know we want to start at B2. We want to take the 7th character plus the 8th character, because the 8th character is a space. We actually want to start on the 9th character, so we're going to say B2 plus 2. And then it asks you for the number of characters. How many characters out do you want to go? Well, I don't know anybody whose name has more than 100 characters in it, so I'm just going to type 100 and close my parentheses and enter. Let's go ahead and copy that all the way down. So now we've got the last name and the first name. All we have to do now is put the formula back together again, or put the name back together again. So in cell E1, I'm going to type full name. And all we have to do is write a function that says, give me what's in cell D2, put a space after it, and give me whatever's in cell C2. Now, some of you probably use a concatenate function. I'm going to say equals D2, then the ampersand, which is the and sign, quote, space, quote, ampersand, then click on C2. Look at that formula. All it's doing is taking whatever's in cell D2, adding a space in between, and giving me whatever's in C2. And enter. Uh-oh. Looks like we got a problem. You see, we've got Raymond, then a whole bunch of spaces, then Bison. Has that ever happened to you on a project that you've been doing where you copy in a database and you get a whole bunch of spaces on the end? Let me tell you, this happens a lot, especially when the databases aren't designed very well. What happens is the database designers, sometimes they'll use what's called an NCAR character, and they'll assign maybe 100 characters to that. But if the data only has 30 characters in it, sometimes it'll add a whole bunch of spaces on to make up the other 100, or however many that data field requires. So what we want to do here is we want to take out all the spaces. In fact, you can look over here. If I click on cell A2 and then take your cursor and click in the bar, you see the blinking light appears way to the right of the last of the name, Raymond. All of this is just a bunch of spaces. In our formula, we want to get rid of the spaces. You do that by using the trim function. So I'm going to click in here in my formula bar and type trim, open parentheses, and I want to enclose that entire formula with that trim function, like that, and enter. And you see that works perfectly. Look at that. Doesn't that look pretty? I'm going to give myself a little bit more space there and copy that all the way down. Now that looks pretty cool. But look over here. You see where David Olson is? David, the first name, is in a format where the first character is capitalized and the rest are lowercase, but his last name is in all caps. Sometimes people enter their own information in, sometimes other people enter in, different people enter it in. Some people do it all in caps, some do it all lowercase. People enter information differently. There's another function you can use that will take care of that. It's called the proper function. The proper function takes the first character of each word and capitalizes it, and the rest of the word in the text string is lowercase. Let me show you how to do that. We're going to type the word proper, open parentheses, and we're going to encapsulate the entire formula right there. I haven't hit enter yet because I want to show you something else. Since that entire column is highlighted, if you just hold down your control key and hit enter, what happens is it applies that formula all the way down. It's kind of like correcting your formula and then copying it down, but it does it all in one step. Look down here, David Olson is now in a proper format. That is a pretty cool function. Look at your spreadsheet now. We've got 4 columns of formulas, and your instructions were to do it in one formula. Well, that's easily solved. Click over here on cell D2, and you see that D2 is simply a formula. In E2, all we're doing is referring back to that formula. So I'm going to click over here on cell D2, and I'm going to copy the formula. So I highlight the formula without the equals sign and type Control-C as in Charlie on my keyboard and escape. What that does is it copies that formula into memory. Now I'm going to click on cell E2, find my D2 reference, highlight the D2 reference, then on my keyboard click Control-V as in Victor and enter. You see what that did? All it did was take the formula that's in D2 and replace the reference in our E2 formula reference. We're going to do the same thing over here in cell C2. So I click on the cell C2, highlight the formula without the equals sign, Control-C on my keyboard, escape. I'll come back over here to my formula, find my C2 reference, and paste it in there using Control-V and enter. Looks like it's working just perfectly. The only other one that we have to replace is the B2 reference. So we come over here to our find column. I'm going to do the same thing here. Highlight, find, escape, come back over here, and we've got 2 B2 references. So I'm going to highlight the first one right there, Control-V, and the second one, Control-V, and enter. Now, you sit back and look at that. You can tell yourself that is a dang cool formula. We don't need these columns anymore, so I'm going to highlight B, C, and D. We're going to delete those. Everything else shows up as an error because we didn't copy it down, so I'm just going to use my handy dandy data fill button, double click, and we see that it goes all the way down. Now look what you've done. You have used the find function, you've used a left function, a mid function, a trim function, and a proper function. used 5 functions in one formula that is extremely useful. It takes the last name, comma, space, first name data, turns it around, and then it cleans it up. It cleaned up the spaces and it cleaned up the caps in the upper and lower case. This is a really cool formula. If you can learn how to do this, you can go to your boss and you can show him this, and you are going to be the Chief Excel Officer of your office. Thank you so very much for joining me in this Excel CEO Challenge. To register for an Excel CEO course, go to www.excelceo.com, click on the Buy It Now button, choose the course that you want, input promotion code EXCEL75, and you'll get a $75 discount off the cost of the course. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and I hope to see you soon as an Excel CEO student.